So, moving on from the fractions I briefly introduced in the last video, if you haven't watched that yet, I would encourage you to before we get into equivalent fractions. Now, equivalent fractions are going to lead into simplifying fractions, which we will do a bit later today. But the main thing we think about when we talk about equivalent fractions is different ways to express sort of the same thing. So that's what we mean by the word equivalent. We're describing the same thing in different ways. Now, here's a little thought experiment for you. Now, let's say I had $8, all in $1 coins, right? I draw these here. Now, I have these 8 coins, and each of these, if we look at it in terms of a fraction, so say I isolate this coin here. This coin, as we talked about, would make up, well, it's one coin out of a total of 8. So if we were to take this as a fraction, our fraction of each of these coins is going to be one out of 8. And this applies to sort of each of these as we go along. Now, if I were, for example, say I took my 8 coins, right? And I owed $4 to a friend of mine, right? So I said, okay, well, I owe you $4. So I'm going to take these four and I'm going to give them to a friend of mine. Now, he's going to have four lots of these coins, and that's going to make up a fraction of 4/8 because each one of these coins is 1/8. So 4 lots of our 1/8 fractions would make up 4/8. Now, take a moment here to think. We have just taken 8 coins and I've separated out 4. Now, if you can pause the video if you need to, if you want to kind of ponder this thought a little bit, but what fraction of all of our coins in the most simplified way have we taken out? Now, if you've had a look at this and you've come to the conclusion yourself, sweet. If you're still following along with me, that is all good. So we have 4 lots of 8 here. I've taken 4 coins out of the 8. Could we say that we've effectively split all of the coins in half into 2? Let me maybe visualize this for you a little bit. We still have our 8 coins. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we've split these into 2. Because I have 4 here and I have 4 here. We have 2 equal portions on each side of this sort of little dividing line I've drawn here. Now, that is because 4/8 is an equivalent fraction to a half. Now, how do we do this mathematically? How do we show this kind of mathematically? Well, here we're going to consider, well, okay, I've got my 4/8 here, but I want to kind of simplify it because I intuitively know through this kind of thought experiment we've written out, I sort of intuitively know, okay, well, if I have 8 coins and I take 4 out, I've effectively split up my thing in 2. I've taken a half out of it. Now, The reason this works is because um, our numerator, this number on our top fraction, at the top of our fraction, and our denominator on the bottom, they each have a common factor. Now, take a moment to think what that could be. But we can say that, well, 4 goes into 4 one time, and 4 goes into 8. 4 goes into 8 two times, sorry. So we can say, well, we can divide each top and bottom, our numerator and denominator, by a factor of 4, hence giving us a half. So we have simplified our fraction here. Now, we could have said, if we wanted to go a long way, we could also say, well, okay, we have 4/8 here. I'm going to write this down here again. We said that this portion made up 4/8. And say we said we couldn't pick up 4 off the top of our head. So we said, okay, well, I know these are both even numbers. So 2 is a common factor for our numerator, our top number, and our denominator, our bottom number. So, okay, let's divide both by 2 because they're even numbers. We know they're going to be divisible by 2. So, divide by 2 here, dividing by 2. We will be left with 2 quarters, right? And that's kind of true that this is also an equivalent fraction, but it's not in its, we call, simplest form. So this is because we have another number that goes into both of these, and that's to divide by 2 again, which will give us, to divide top and bottom by 2 again, which gives us 1/2. So our highest common factor, we say, is not 2, it is 4. And dividing by 2 times is the same as dividing by 4 here. So this is just a brief example to illustrate what we mean by equivalent fractions. So our 4/8, our 2 quarters, and our 1/2 are all equivalent fractions. They are different ways of saying the same thing. So if I had 4 out of 8 coins, or if I had 2 out of 4 coins, or 1 out of 2 coins, we're saying the same thing each of these times. We're saying that, well, these are, when we simplify them, they're all going to make up a half. 4/8, 2 quarters, and a half are all different ways, essentially, of saying a half. So I hope this video helped to explain this a little bit, explain this concept a bit, and we'll go into simplifying fractions on a larger scale in the next video. I'll see you there.